Stark oath. Lysara Rathmore had always been told not to stray too far into the woods. But the night she did, the world shifted. The howling began. The torches flickered with an unseen wind. And then he appeared golden-eyed, broad-shouldered, his voice dark as the storm rolling in behind him. "You've walked too far," he murmured. "Now you belong to me." Chapter 1. The Night of Whispering Winds. The wind carried secrets that night, rustling through the ancient oaks surrounding the village of Oakhaven with an urgency Lysara Rathmore had never felt before. At 57, Lysara believed she had heard all the whispers the wind could carry, whispers of lost loves, of children grown and gone, of the slow, steady rhythm of a life lived within well-worn boundaries. But tonight, the wind sang a different song, a melody of unease that prickled her skin and set her heart to a frantic, unfamiliar pace. She adjusted the worn shawl around her shoulders, the wool scratching against the soft skin of her neck, a familiar discomfort in an increasingly unfamiliar world. Her fingers, gnarled with age and the countless stitches they'd sewn over the years, tightened around the worn, leather-bound book she held. It was her grandmother's journal, filled with half-remembered folklore and remedies that smelled of lavender and old magic. Tonight, she sought solace in its pages, a grounding in the face of the growing disquiet. "Don't stray too far into the woods, Lysara," her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, as clear as if the old woman were standing beside her. "The Holophong holds them, and his claim is eternal." The Holophong, a creature of myth, a boogeyman used to scare children into obedience. A legend whispered around crackling fires on cold winter nights. Lysara had always dismissed it as such, a fanciful tale to keep villagers from wandering into the truly dangerous parts of the forest, the places where wild animals roamed and treacherous ravines lay hidden beneath a carpet of fallen leaves. But the wind seemed to disagree. It whipped around her, tugging at her gray-streaked auburn hair, which had come loose from its braid. The scent of pine and damp earth, usually comforting, now held a metallic tang, a hint of something wild and untamed that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She'd come further than she intended, drawn by an uncharacteristic restlessness. The village, with its familiar routines and predictable faces, had felt stifling tonight. The silence of her empty cottage, usually a welcome respite, had pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. Her husband, Thomas, had been gone these past 5 years, taken by a wasting sickness that had stolen his laughter and left her with a silence that echoed in the hollows of her heart. The path, barely visible in the fading light, led her deeper into the woods. The trees grew taller, their branches intertwining overhead, blocking out the last vestiges of the twilight sky. The air grew colder, and the sounds of the village, the distant barking of a dog, the murmur of voices faded away, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the snapping of twigs underfoot. She stopped, her breath catching in her throat. A sense of wrongness, deep and visceral, settled over her. It wasn't just the darkness or the unfamiliar sounds. It was something else, something primal, a feeling of being watched, of being hunted. The howling began then, low and mournful, rising from the depths of the forest. It wasn't the sound of a single wolf, but a chorus, a symphony of wildness that resonated deep within her bones. It spoke of ancient pacts and forgotten gods, of a power that lay dormant beneath the veneer of civilization. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through her. She turned to flee, to retrace her steps back to the safety of the village, but it was too late. The torches that lined the edge of the village, usually a comforting beacon, flickered violently, as if caught in an unseen gale. The flames danced and writhed, casting grotesque shadows that twisted the familiar trees into monstrous shapes. And then he appeared. He stepped out from the shadows, materializing from the darkness like a phantom. He was tall, impossibly so, his silhouette outlined against the flickering torchlight. His shoulders were broad, his presence radiating a power that was both terrifying and strangely compelling. Lysara could feel the air crackle around him, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. His eyes. They were the first thing she truly saw, burning with a golden light that seemed to pierce through the darkness. They were the eyes of a predator, sharp and intelligent, but beneath the surface, she saw something else, a flicker of sadness, a hint of ancient sorrow that resonated with a loneliness she knew all too well. He moved with a fluid grace that was both animalistic and regal. He wore dark clothing, leather and furs that blended seamlessly with the shadows. A silver amulet, shaped like a wolf's head with bared fangs, hung from a chain around his neck, glinting in the flickering light. It was the symbol of the Holophong, the creature of legend, now standing before her, undeniably real. His voice, when he spoke, was a low rumble, dark as the storm rolling in behind him, carrying the weight of centuries. It resonated deep within her chest, vibrating through her very being. "You've walked too far," he murmured, his voice laced with a possessiveness that sent a shiver down her spine. His gaze held hers unwavering, trapping her in its golden depths. "Now you belong to me." His words were a pronouncement, a claim, and Lysara, despite the terror that clawed at her throat, felt a strange pull, a sense of inevitability, as if this moment had been ordained long ago, written in the stars and whispered on the wind. She tried to speak, to protest, to deny his claim, but the words died in her throat, choked by fear and a growing, inexplicable sense of recognition. It was as if, on some deep, primal level, she knew him. He took a step closer, and she could smell him, the scent of pine needles, damp earth, and something else, something wild and musky, that triggered a strange, unfamiliar stirring within her. It was a scent that bypassed her conscious mind and spoke directly to her instincts, awakening something ancient and dormant within her soul. She wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but her body refused to obey. She was rooted to the spot, trapped by his gaze, by the power that emanated from him, by the terrifying, exhilarating realization that her life, the life she had known, was over. He reached out, his hand large and calloused, and gently touched her cheek. His touch, surprisingly gentle, sent a jolt of electricity through her, a spark that ignited a fire within her, a fire she thought had long been extinguished. His fingers traced the lines etched by time and sorrow, and she found herself leaning into his touch, drawn to his warmth, to the strange comfort she found in his presence. What would become of her, claimed by this creature of myth, this being of immense power and ancient sorrow? Chapter 2. Echoes of a Forgotten Promise. The touch lingered, a brand on her skin, a silent vow exchanged in the heart of the whispering woods. Lysara felt a tremor run through her, not entirely from fear. There was a strange familiarity in his touch, a resonance that echoed in the deepest chambers of her heart, stirring memories she didn't know she possessed. It was as if her soul recognized his, a connection forged long before their meeting, in a time shrouded in mist and ancient lore. He lowered his hand, but the connection remained, an invisible thread binding them together. The golden light in his eyes softened, the predatory gleam receding to reveal a depth of emotion that both intrigued and unsettled her. He looked at her, not as a predator eyes its prey, but as a man might gaze upon a long-lost something. He couldn't say lover. "Not yet." "Lysara," he said, her name a soft rumble in his chest, a sound that seemed to vibrate with the very essence of the forest. It was the first time he'd spoken her name, and the sound of it, spoken with such reverence, sent another shiver down her spine. How did he know her name? She finally found her voice, though it trembled with uncertainty. Who are you?" A flicker of something unreadable crossed his face, pain, regret, perhaps even a hint of fear. "I am Eric," he said, the name spoken with a hesitation that suggested it was both a truth and a burden. "And you, Lysara, are bound to me, by a promise made long ago." A promise? Lysara's mind reeled. She had made no promises, not to any creature of the woods, not to any man other than Thomas, and that promise had been broken by death, not by choice. Her grandmother's stories, the folklore of the Holophong, flooded her mind. Tales of a powerful being, a guardian of the forest, bound by ancient magic to protect its secrets and its people. But there were other stories, darker tales, of a curse, of a stolen love, of a pact made in desperation and sealed in blood. I don't understand, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. What promise? I've made no promise to you. Eric's expression tightened, his jaw clenching as if he were wrestling with some inner turmoil. Not you, personally, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But your bloodline. Your ancestors. They made a pact with the Holophong, a pact that binds you to me, to this forest, to this fate. He gestured around them, to the towering trees, the flickering torchlight, the swirling mist that was beginning to creep through the undergrowth. The air hummed with a palpable energy, a sense of ancient power that made Lysara feel small and insignificant. The Holophong is not a myth, Lysara, he continued, his voice softening again. It is a responsibility, a burden. And now that burden is yours as well. Lysara's mind struggled to grasp the enormity of his words. Her life, her quiet, predictable life, had been shattered in a single night. She was no longer just Lysara Rathmore, the widowed seamstress of Oakhaven. She was something more, something linked to this enigmatic man, to this ancient power, to a destiny she had never imagined. But why me? She asked, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and a growing sense of curiosity. Why now? Eric looked away, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, where the first hint of dawn was beginning to paint the sky with streaks of gray and pale pink. He seemed to be lost in thought, wrestling with memories that spanned centuries. The balance is shifting, he finally said, his voice low and troubled. The old magic is stirring. There are forces at work that threaten this forest, this world. And you, Lysara, are the key to maintaining that balance. He turned back to her, his golden eyes intense, searching. Your grandmother, she knew, he said, his voice barely a whisper. She tried to prepare you, to warn you, but the knowledge was lost, fragmented, buried beneath layers of doubt and disbelief. Lysara thought of her grandmother's journal, of the strange stories and cryptic warnings she had dismissed as folklore. Could it be true? Could her grandmother have known about this connection, this destiny? I don't know what to do, she confessed, her voice trembling with vulnerability. She felt lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, her carefully constructed world ripped apart at the seams. Eric stepped closer, his presence radiating a warmth that seemed to melt the icy fear that had gripped her heart. He reached out and gently took her hand, his touch sending another jolt of that strange, familiar energy through her. His hand was large and calloused, but his grip was gentle, reassuring. You don't have to do anything tonight, he said, his voice a soothing balm to her frayed nerves. Come with me. I will keep you safe. I will explain. He offered no threats, no demands. Only a plea, veiled in the depths of his golden eyes. A plea for trust, for understanding, for acceptance. And despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Lysara found herself drawn to him, to the promise of answers, to the strange, undeniable connection that bound them together. She looked into his eyes, into the depths of that ancient sorrow and hidden strength, and she knew, with a certainty that defied logic and reason, that she had no choice. Her fate was intertwined with his, with the fate of the Holophong, with the fate of the forest itself. With a hesitant nod, she placed her hand in his, a silent agreement, a leap of faith into the unknown. The moment her fingers intertwined with his, a surge of energy pulsed between them, a tangible manifestation of the bond that connected them. It was a feeling of coming home. Where will this feeling lead? Chapter 3. The Scent of Pine and Blood. The journey was a blur of shadows and whispered words. Eric led her through the dense forest, his pace swift and sure, his hand firmly clasping hers. He moved with an uncanny grace, navigating the treacherous terrain with an ease that spoke of long familiarity. Lysara struggled to keep up, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her legs burning with exertion. But she dared not complain, dared not break the fragile trust that was beginning to form between them. The scent of pine was overwhelming, sharp and resinous, mingling with the damp earth and the lingering metallic tang that had first alerted her to the shift in the air. Now, she recognized that metallic scent. It was the scent of blood, faint but unmistakable, a constant reminder of the wildness that surrounded her, of the power that Eric wielded. It was a scent that both repelled and intrigued her, a primal trigger that awakened a dormant instinct within her. The forest itself seemed to respond to Eric's presence. The wind, which had been whipping around them earlier, now subsided, becoming a gentle breeze that rustled the leaves in a soothing rhythm. The shadows seemed to part before them, revealing hidden pathways and secret glades. The creatures of the night, the owls and the foxes, the deer and the rabbits, watched them pass with a curious stillness, as if acknowledging Eric's dominion over their realm. Lysara, despite her exhaustion and fear, found herself captivated by the beauty of the forest. She had lived near it her entire life, but she had never truly seen it before. Now, under Eric's guidance, she saw it with new eyes, saw the intricate web of life that connected every tree, every creature, every drop of dew clinging to a spider's web. "We are almost there," Eric said, his voice breaking through her reverie. He glanced back at her, his golden eyes filled with a concern that warmed her heart. "Are you all right?" Lysara nodded, forcing a smile. "Just tired," she admitted, "and a little overwhelmed." Eric's lips curved into a faint smile, a fleeting expression that softened his features and made him seem less intimidating. "I understand," he said. "It is a lot to take in. But you are strong, Lysara. Stronger than you know." His words, spoken with such quiet confidence, bolstered her spirits. She straightened her shoulders, drawing strength from his belief in her. She would not falter. She would not show him her fear. They emerged from the dense forest into a clearing bathed in the soft glow of the rising sun. In the center of the clearing stood a cottage, nestled beneath the branches of a giant oak tree. It was a simple structure, built of stone and timber, with a thatched roof and smoke curling from the chimney. It looked ordinary, almost disappointingly so, after the mystical journey through the woods. But as they approached, Lysara noticed the details. The stones were intricately carved with ancient symbols, the same symbols she had seen in her grandmother's journal. The timber was dark and weathered, as if it had stood for centuries. The windows were small and narrow, but they glowed with a warm, inviting light. The air around the cottage hummed with a subtle energy, a sense of peace and protection that washed over Lysara, easing her tension and calming her fears. It felt safe. Safer than she had felt in years. Eric led her to the door, which was made of heavy oak, bound with iron. He pushed it open, revealing a cozy interior, lit by the warm glow of a fire burning in a large stone hearth. The room was sparsely furnished, but comfortable. A wooden table and chairs stood in the center of the room, a comfortable-looking armchair sat by the fire, and a bookshelf filled with leather-bound volumes lined one wall. The scent of herbs and wood smoke filled the air, a comforting aroma that reminded Lysara of her grandmother's kitchen. It was a scent of home, of safety, of belonging. "Welcome," Eric said, his voice soft and welcoming. "This is my home. For now, it is yours as well." Lysara stepped inside, her eyes taking in every detail. It was a far cry from her own small cottage in the village, but it felt right. It felt like a place where she could heal, where she could learn, where she could become. Eric closed the door behind them, shutting out the world, creating a sanctuary, a haven. He turned to her, his golden eyes searching, questioning. "You are safe here, Lysara," he said, his voice a low rumble. "No one can harm you here." He reached out and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his touch sending that familiar shiver through her. His fingers lingered on her cheek, and she found herself leaning into his touch, drawn to his warmth, to his strength, to the unspoken promise that hung between them. "Rest now," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "We will talk more later. There is much to explain." He gestured towards the armchair by the fire. Lysara, exhausted but strangely at peace, sank into its soft cushions. The warmth of the fire enveloped her, easing her aching muscles and soothing her frayed nerves. She closed her eyes, letting the scent of pine and blood, the scent of Eric, lull her into a deep, dreamless sleep. But even in sleep, a question lingered. What secrets did this cottage, this man, hold, and how would they change her forever? Chapter 4. A Cage of Gilded Thorns. Lysara awoke to the aroma of brewing herbs and the crackling of the fire. Sunlight streamed through the small windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. She was wrapped in a thick, woolen blanket, the soft texture a welcome contrast to the rough fabric of her dress. For a moment, she felt disoriented, the events of the previous night seeming like a surreal dream. But the lingering scent of pine and blood, the unfamiliar surroundings, and the dull ache in her legs confirmed the reality of her situation. She was in Eric's cottage, a prisoner of circumstance, bound by a forgotten promise to a man she barely knew, a creature of myth made flesh. Fear, a cold knot in her stomach, tightened its grip. But beneath the fear, there was a flicker of something else, curiosity, and a strange, unsettling sense of anticipation. She sat up, pushing the blanket aside. The room was empty, but she could hear the sounds of movement from another part of the cottage. Eric was there, somewhere, tending to his life. A life that was now inextricably intertwined with hers. She rose, her legs stiff and sore, and walked to the window. The clearing was bathed in the golden light of morning. Birds sang in the branches of the giant oak tree, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. It was a scene of idyllic beauty, a stark contrast to the darkness and danger of the previous night. But even in this beauty, she felt trapped. The cottage, while comfortable and welcoming, was still a cage. A cage of gilded thorns, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. She was bound to this place, to Eric, by a force she didn't understand, a force that both terrified and intrigued her. The door creaked open, and Eric entered the room. He carried a tray laden with a steaming bowl, a wooden cup, and a plate of bread and cheese. He looked different in the daylight. Less menacing, more human. The harsh lines of his face were softened by the morning light, and his golden eyes, while still intense, held a warmth that she hadn't noticed before. He wore simple clothes, a linen shirt, and dark trousers that emphasized his muscular physique. The silver amulet, the symbol of the holophong, still hung around his neck, a constant reminder of his true nature. "You are awake," he said, his voice a soft rumble that sent a shiver down her spine. He placed the tray on the table, his movements graceful and efficient. "I brought you some food." Lysara approached the table, her stomach rumbling at the sight of the simple fare. She sat down, her eyes fixed on Eric. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He sat opposite her, his gaze unwavering. "Eat," he said, gesturing to the bowl. "You need your strength." Lysara picked up the wooden spoon and began to eat. The soup was thick and savory, filled with vegetables and herbs. It warmed her from the inside out, chasing away the lingering chill of the night. She ate slowly, savoring each mouthful, her mind racing with questions. What happens now? She finally asked, her voice trembling slightly. Eric leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Now," he said, we begin. We begin to unravel the secrets of your past, of your bloodline, of the promise that binds us." He paused, his gaze intense. "You are not a prisoner, Lysara," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Not in the traditional sense. But you are bound. Bound to me, to this forest, to a destiny you cannot escape." "But I don't want this destiny," she protested, her voice rising in frustration. "I want my old life back. I want to go home." Eric's expression softened, his golden eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored her own. "I know," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "But that is not possible. The past cannot be undone. The promise cannot be broken." He reached out and gently took her hand, his touch sending that familiar jolt of energy through her. His hand was warm and strong, a comforting presence in the midst of her turmoil. I will not force you, Lysara, he said, his voice sincere. I will give you time. Time to understand, to accept, to learn. But I will also protect you. From those who would seek to harm you, from those who would exploit your power. Power? She questioned, her brow furrowing. What power? Eric smiled, a fleeting expression that lit up his face. The power of your bloodline, he said. The power of the Holophong. It is a power that has been dormant for generations, but it is now awakening within you. He explained, slowly and patiently, the history of the Holophong, of the ancient pact made between her ancestors and the guardian of the forest. He spoke of a time when magic was real, when humans and supernatural creatures lived side by side, when the balance between the two worlds was maintained by a sacred bond. He told her of the curse, of the stolen love, of the betrayal that had shattered that balance and plunged the forest into darkness. He told her of her own role in that story, of the prophecy that foretold her coming, of the hope that she represented. Lysara listened, her mind reeling with the enormity of his words. It was a story that defied logic and reason, a story that challenged everything she had ever believed about the world. But as she listened, as she looked into Eric's eyes, as she felt the warmth of his hand in hers, she began to believe. She began to believe in the magic, in the curse, in the prophecy. She began to believe in her own power, in her own destiny. It was a terrifying prospect, but also exhilarating. A part of her, the part that had been yearning for something more, for something beyond the confines of her quiet, predictable life, reached out to that destiny, embraced it. But another part, the part that clung to the familiar, to the safety of the known, recoiled in fear. Could she truly embrace this new life, this dangerous, unpredictable path? Could she trust Eric, this creature of myth, this man who held her fate in his hands? She looked out the window, at the sunlit clearing, at the cage of gilded thorns that surrounded her. She was trapped, but perhaps this cage was not a prison, but a sanctuary. A place where she could learn, where she could grow, where she could become something more than she had ever imagined. But at what cost? Chapter 5. The Mark of the Holophong. The days that followed were a blend of quiet routine and startling revelations. Lysara settled into the rhythm of life in Eric's cottage, learning the ways of the forest, the secrets of the herbs, the whispers of the wind. She helped Eric with his chores, tending the small garden, gathering firewood, preparing meals. They shared stories, their pasts unfolding like tapestries woven with threads of joy and sorrow. Lysara spoke of Thomas, her late husband, of their quiet life together, of the love they had shared, and the grief that still lingered in her heart. Eric listened patiently, his golden eyes filled with understanding, with a shared sense of loss that created an unspoken bond between them. He spoke of his own long life, of the centuries he had spent guarding the forest, of the battles he had fought, of the loves he had lost. He spoke of the loneliness of immortality, of the burden of responsibility, of the constant threat of the forces that sought to destroy the balance between the human and supernatural worlds. His stories were filled with magic and wonder, with creatures of myth and legend, with battles fought under the light of the moon. But they were also stories of loss, of betrayal, of the enduring pain of a broken heart. Lysara found herself drawn to his vulnerability, to the hidden depths of his soul, to the man beneath the mask of the immortal guardian. One evening, as they sat by the fire, sharing a simple meal of roasted rabbit and wild berries, Eric turned to her, his expression serious. "It is time," he said, his voice low and resonant. "Time for you to understand the true nature of your power, of your connection to the Holophong." He reached out and took her hand, his touch sending that familiar spark of energy through her. He turned her hand over, palm up, and pointed to a faint, crescent-shaped mark on her wrist. It was a mark she had always had, a birthmark she had never paid much attention to. But now, under Eric's gaze, it seemed to shimmer with a faint, golden light. "This is the mark of the Holophong," he said, his voice a whisper. "It is the symbol of your bloodline, of your connection to the ancient magic of this forest." It is the source of your power. He explained that the mark was not just a birthmark, but a gateway, a conduit through which the power of the Holophong flowed. He told her that it was through this mark that she could communicate with the creatures of the forest, that she could draw upon the energy of the earth, that she could heal. He demonstrated, placing his own hand over her mark, his fingers gently tracing its outline. A surge of energy flowed between them, stronger than anything she had felt before. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat. She could feel the power of the forest coursing through her veins, a wild, untamed energy that both thrilled and terrified her. You must learn to control it, Eric said, his voice urgent. To harness it, to use it wisely. It is a powerful force, and it can be dangerous if not wielded with care. He began to teach her, guiding her through ancient rituals, showing her how to draw upon the energy of the earth, how to communicate with the creatures of the forest, how to heal with the touch of her hand. Lysara struggled at first, her mind resisting the unfamiliar sensations, the overwhelming power. She was afraid of hurting herself, of hurting others, of losing control. But Eric was patient, encouraging, his belief in her unwavering. Slowly, gradually, she began to understand. She began to feel the subtle currents of energy that flowed through the forest, to hear the whispers of the wind, to see the world with new eyes. She learned to communicate with the animals, to soothe their fears, to heal their wounds. She discovered a strength within herself she never knew existed, a power that resonated deep within her soul. It was a power born of her bloodline, of her connection to the Holophong, of her growing bond with Eric. But with this power came responsibility. She was no longer just Lysara Rathmore, the widowed seamstress of Oakhaven. She was a guardian, a protector, a force for balance in a world teetering on the brink of chaos. One night, as they stood beneath the full moon, their hands intertwined, their bodies close, Eric looked at her, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of desire and something else. Something deeper, something that spoke of a connection that transcended time and space. You are becoming, he said, his voice a husky whisper. Becoming the woman you were meant to be. Becoming mine. His words sent a shiver down her spine, a mixture of fear and excitement. She knew what he meant. She felt it too, the growing attraction, the undeniable pull that drew them together. But she was still afraid of surrendering to that pull, afraid of losing herself in the power of the Holophong, in the love of a man who was both her protector and her captor. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his. Could she truly trust him? Could she truly surrender to this destiny, to this love? Could she embrace the mark of the Holophong, the power it represented, the responsibility it entailed? The answer, she knew, lay not in the stars, but within her own heart. But which path would her heart choose? Chapter 6. Whispers in the Ancient Library. The cottage held more than just the warmth of a hearth and the scent of brewing herbs. It possessed a history, etched into the very stones and timbers, whispered by the wind that rustled through the ancient oak outside. Eric revealed this history slowly, like layers of an onion being peeled back, each layer revealing a new depth, a new understanding. One of the most significant revelations was the library. It wasn't a grand hall, filled with towering shelves and elaborate carvings. Instead, it was a small, unassuming room tucked away at the back of the cottage, behind a door that blended seamlessly with the wall. Lysara had passed it countless times without realizing its existence. This, Eric said, his voice hushed with reverence as he pushed open the door, is where the knowledge of the Holophong is kept. The history, the rituals, the secrets, everything. Lysara stepped inside, her breath catching in her throat. The room was small and circular, the walls lined with shelves filled with leather-bound books, scrolls, and ancient artifacts. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, parchment, and a faint, almost imperceptible hint of magic. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that streamed through a single, high window, illuminating the intricate carvings on the ceiling, depicting scenes of wolves, forests, and figures that seemed both human and something more. These books, Eric said, his hand gently caressing the spine of a particularly ancient-looking volume, are not like the books in your village. They are not just stories. They are living records. They hold the memories, the experiences, the knowledge of generations of Holophong guardians. He explained that the books were not written with ink, but with a special kind of magic, a binding spell that infused the very essence of the writer into the pages. To read them was not just to read words, but to experience the thoughts, the feelings, the memories of the author. Lysara, initially hesitant, reached out and touched one of the books. The leather was worn and smooth, warm to the touch. As she held it, she felt a faint tingling sensation, a sense of connection to something ancient and powerful. Eric showed her how to access the memories, how to open her mind to the whispers of the past. It was a delicate process, requiring focus, concentration, and a willingness to surrender to the flow of information. Lysara spent hours in the library, poring over the ancient texts, learning about the history of the Holophong, the origins of the curse, the intricacies of the magic. She read about Eric's ancestors, about their triumphs and their failures, their loves and their losses. She learned about the creatures of the forest, their powers, their weaknesses, their role in the balance of the world. She discovered that the curse that bound the Holophong was not simply a matter of a stolen love, but a complex web of betrayal, sacrifice, and ancient magic. It involved a powerful sorceress, a jealous rival, and a pact made with forces beyond human comprehension. She also learned more about her own bloodline, about the women who had come before her, the women who had carried the mark of the Holophong, the women who had played a crucial role in maintaining the balance between the worlds. She discovered that she was not just a descendant, but a culmination, the inheritor of a legacy that stretched back centuries. The more she learned, the more she understood Eric, his burden, his loneliness, his unwavering dedication to protecting the forest. She saw him not just as a creature of myth, but as a man, flawed and complex, carrying the weight of centuries on his shoulders. One day, while exploring a particularly dusty corner of the library, Lysara stumbled upon a small, wooden box tucked away behind a stack of ancient scrolls. The box was plain and unadorned, but it radiated a powerful energy, a sense of importance. She brought the box to Eric, her heart pounding with anticipation. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Eric's eyes widened in surprise. He took the box from her, his fingers gently tracing its outline. "I don't know," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "I have never seen this before." He carefully opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a silver ring. It was a simple band, but it was intricately carved with the same symbols she had seen on her birthmark, the symbols of the Holophong. As she looked at it, the ring seemed to shimmer with a faint, golden light, the same light that shone in Eric's eyes. Eric picked up the ring, his hand trembling slightly. He held it out to Lysara, his gaze intense. "This," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "is a binding ring. It is a symbol of commitment, of love." He explained that the ring was not just a piece of jewelry, but a magical artifact, a conduit through which two souls could be bound together, their destinies intertwined forever. It was a symbol of the ultimate commitment, a vow that transcended time and space. He slipped the ring on. The perfect fit felt both terrifying and exhilarating. What choice had she made, accepting this ancient token? Where will the binding lead? Chapter 7. The Dance of Shadows and Flame. The ring felt cool against her skin, a constant reminder of the bond it represented, the commitment it signified. It pulsed with a subtle energy, a faint vibration that resonated deep within her, connecting her to Eric, to the Holophong, to the ancient magic of the forest. It was a feeling of belonging, of being irrevocably linked to something larger than herself. Lysara found herself touching the ring often, her fingers tracing its intricate carvings, seeking reassurance, understanding. It was a tangible symbol of the path she had chosen, the life she was embracing. A life filled with magic, with danger, with love. The attraction between her and Eric had been simmering beneath the surface, a slow burn that had gradually intensified with each shared moment, each whispered conversation, each touch of their hands. The ring was a catalyst, bringing that attraction to the forefront, transforming it into something deeper, something more profound. Eric changed after she accepted the ring. He became more open, more vulnerable. He shed the last vestiges of his guarded demeanor, revealing the man beneath the mask of the immortal guardian. He shared his hopes, his fears, his dreams with her, creating an intimacy that both thrilled and terrified her. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the clearing, Eric built a bonfire outside the cottage. The flames danced and crackled, casting a warm, flickering light that illuminated their faces. The air was filled with the scent of burning wood and the sounds of the night creatures stirring in the forest. "Tonight," Eric said, his voice a low rumble, "we celebrate. We celebrate our bond, our future, our love." He had prepared a feast: roasted pheasant, wild mushrooms, honey cakes, and a potent wine made from fermented berries. They ate beneath the stars, their laughter mingling with the crackling of the fire. Eric told her stories of his past, of his adventures, of the wonders he had seen. Lysara, in turn, shared her own memories, her own dreams, her own hopes for the future. As the night deepened, the fire burned low, casting dancing shadows that played across their faces. Eric reached out and took her hand, his touch sending that familiar spark of energy through her. He drew her to her feet, and they began to dance. It wasn't a formal dance, with prescribed steps and intricate movements. It was a dance of shadows and flame, a dance of souls, a dance of two beings drawn together by an ancient force, by a love that transcended time and space. They moved together, their bodies swaying in rhythm with the crackling fire, with the whispering wind, with the beating of their hearts. Eric held her close, his arms strong and protective, his body warm against hers. Lysara leaned into him, surrendering to his embrace, to the feeling of safety, of belonging, of love. She had never felt so alive, so connected, so free. The fear that had haunted her for so long, the fear of the unknown, the fear of her own power, began to fade, replaced by a sense of joy, of excitement, of possibility. As they danced, Lysara felt the power of the holophone surge within her, stronger than ever before. She felt the connection to the forest, to the creatures of the night, to the ancient magic that flowed through her veins. She felt powerful. Eric stopped dancing, his gaze intense, searching. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently caressing her cheeks. His golden eyes, reflecting the flickering flames, were filled with a love that took her breath away. "Lysara," he whispered, his voice husky with emotion. "My Lysara, you have brought light back into my life, hope back into my heart. You have saved me." His words resonated deep within her soul, confirming what she already knew. She had saved him, just as he had saved her. They had found each other, two lost souls drawn together by fate, by destiny, by love. He lowered his head and kissed her. It was a kiss that sealed their bond, a kiss that promised forever, a kiss that ignited a fire within her, a fire that burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns. It was a kiss of shadows and flame, of ancient magic and enduring love, of a future yet to be written. But as they kissed, as they surrendered to the passion that consumed them, a distant howl echoed through the forest, a sound of warning, a reminder that their world was not safe, that their love was threatened, that their destiny was not yet fulfilled. The dance was over. The real challenge was about to begin. Chapter 8. The Price of a Stolen Heart. The howl shattered the intimacy of the moment, a discordant note in the symphony of their love. It was a sound filled with pain, with rage, with a primal hunger that sent a chill down Lysara's spine. Eric stiffened, his body tensing, his golden eyes darkening with a predatory gleam. He pulled away from her, his gaze scanning the surrounding forest. "What is it?" Lysara asked, her voice trembling with apprehension. "Trouble," Eric replied, his voice grim. Something is trespassing. Hunting. He explained that the howl was not from a regular wolf, but from a creature corrupted by dark magic, a creature driven by a relentless hunger for power, for blood. It was a creature that threatened the balance of the forest, the balance they were sworn to protect. "Stay here," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "I will deal with it." He started to move towards the forest, his body shifting, transforming. His muscles rippled, his bones cracked, his skin began to sprout fur. Lysara watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as he transformed into his wolf form, a magnificent creature of shadow and silver, his golden eyes burning with an unearthly light. But Lysara couldn't stay behind. The ring on her finger pulsed with a warmth, a connection to Eric, to the forest, to the danger that threatened them. She felt a surge of power within her, the power of the Holophong, urging her to act, to protect, to fight. "No," she said, her voice firm, surprising even herself. "I'm going with you." Eric, halfway through his transformation, paused, turning his head to look at her, his wolf eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and respect. He hesitated for a moment, his instincts warring with his desire to protect her. "It is dangerous, Lysara," he said, his voice a low growl. "You are not ready." "I may not be ready," she replied, her voice unwavering, "but I am not helpless. And I will not stand by while you risk your life alone." She drew upon the power of the Holophong, feeling the energy surge through her veins, tingling on her skin. She focused her mind, her will, on the connection to the forest, to the creatures of the night. She felt a shift within her, a subtle transformation, not as dramatic as Eric's, but still significant. Her senses sharpened, her reflexes quickened, her strength increased. Eric studied her for a moment, his golden eyes assessing, searching. He saw the determination in her eyes, the power that radiated from her, the unwavering loyalty that bound them together. He knew he couldn't stop her, that she was as much a part of this fight as he was. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement, a silent acceptance. "Then come," he growled, his voice a mixture of warning and pride. "But stay close. And be careful." They entered the forest together, Eric in his wolf form, Lysara moving with a newfound grace and agility. The darkness enveloped them, the sounds of the night amplified, the scent of pine and blood thick in the air. They tracked the corrupted wolf, following its scent, its howls, its trail of destruction. It was a creature of nightmare, larger and more ferocious than any ordinary wolf, its fur matted with blood, its eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. They found it in a clearing, feeding on the carcass of a deer. The creature looked up, sensing their presence, its lips curling back in a snarl, revealing fangs dripping with blood. It let out a deafening howl, a challenge, a threat. The battle was fierce and brutal. Eric attacked with the ferocity of a wild animal, his claws and fangs tearing at the creature's flesh. Lysara, drawing upon her newfound power, supported him, using her enhanced senses to anticipate the creature's movements, using her connection to the forest to hinder its attacks. She discovered she could manipulate the shadows, weaving them into shields, into snares, into weapons. She could communicate with the trees, urging their roots to entangle the creature's legs, their branches to block its path. But the corrupted wolf was strong, driven by a dark magic that made it resistant to their attacks. It fought with a relentless fury, its claws and fangs leaving deep wounds on Eric's body. Lysara, seeing Eric falter, felt a surge of fear, of desperation. She knew she had to do something, to find a way to defeat the creature, to save Eric. She remembered the stories she had read in the ancient library, the stories of the curse, of the sorceress who had created it, of the power that fueled it. She realized that the creature was not just a wolf, but a vessel, a conduit for the sorceress's dark magic. To defeat the creature, she had to sever that connection, to break the curse. It was a risky move, a desperate gamble. But she had no choice. She focused all her will, all her power, on the ring on her finger, on the connection to Eric, to the Holophong, to the ancient magic of the forest. She reached out, her hand glowing with a golden light, and touched the creature's forehead. A surge of energy flowed between them, a battle of wills, a clash of magic. The creature howled in agony, its body convulsing, the red light in its eyes flickering, fading. Lysara held on, channeling all her strength, all her love for Eric, into the connection. She felt the curse breaking, the dark magic dissipating, the creature's power waning. Finally, with a final, agonizing howl, the creature collapsed, its body dissolving into dust, leaving behind only the faint scent of sulfur and the lingering echo of its pain. Lysara stood, trembling, exhausted, but triumphant. She had done it. She had defeated the creature. She had saved Eric. But she had also learned a valuable lesson, a painful truth. The price of power, the price of love, the price of protecting the balance, was always high, and she was willing to pay it. But was Eric truly safe? Chapter 9. Beneath a blood moon's gaze. Eric, his wounds slowly healing thanks to the inherent magic of his bloodline, shifted back to his human form, the transformation as fluid and graceful as it had been terrifying to witness before. He was pale, streaked with blood and dirt, but his golden eyes shone with a fierce pride, a love that transcended the pain he must have been feeling. "You are magnificent," he said, his voice hoarse, reaching out to touch her cheek, his fingers leaving a smudge of blood on her skin. Lysara leaned into his touch, her body trembling with the aftermath of the battle, with the exertion of using her newfound power. She felt drained, exhausted, but also exhilarated. She had faced her fear, she had embraced her destiny, she had fought alongside the man she loved. "We did it," she said, her voice a whisper, her gaze meeting his. "Together." Eric nodded, his lips curving into a faint smile. He pulled her close, embracing her, holding her tight, as if afraid to let her go. They stood there, in the silent clearing, beneath the watchful gaze of the moon, their bodies intertwined, their hearts beating as one. But the peace was short-lived. The moon, which had been a pale, silvery crescent, began to shift, to change. It grew larger, fuller, its color deepening from silver to a deep, ominous red. It was a blood moon, a rare and powerful celestial event, a sign of great upheaval, of great change. Lysara felt a tremor run through the earth, a vibration that resonated deep within her bones. The air grew heavy, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. The animals of the forest fell silent, their cries hushed, their movements stilled. "What is happening?" Lysara asked, her voice filled with apprehension. Eric looked up at the blood moon, his expression grim. "It is a sign," he said, his voice low and troubled. "A sign of the gathering storm. A sign that our enemies are mobilizing." He explained that the blood moon amplified all magic, both light and dark. It was a time of great power, but also of great danger. It was a time when the veil between the worlds was at its thinnest, when creatures of darkness could cross over more easily, when the balance between good and evil was most precarious. "They know about you, Lysara," he said, his voice urgent. "They know about your power. They know about our bond. And they will come for you." He explained that the sorceress who had created the curse, the sorceress whose dark magic had corrupted the wolf, was still alive, still powerful. She had been waiting for centuries for the prophecy to be fulfilled, for the descendant of the Hollow Fong to awaken, for the opportunity to reclaim the power that had been stolen from her. "She wants to use you, Lysara," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and anger. "To break the curse completely, to unleash her full power upon the world. To destroy the balance." Lysara felt a chill run down her spine. She had known that her destiny was dangerous, that her power came with a price. But she had not realized the full extent of the threat, the magnitude of the forces arrayed against them. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Eric's gaze hardened, his golden eyes burning with a fierce determination. "We fight," he said, his voice unwavering. "We protect the forest. We protect each other. We protect the balance." He took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "We are not alone, Lysara," he said. "We have allies. We have the creatures of the forest, the ancient spirits, the power of the Holophong. And we have each other." He explained that they needed to prepare, to gather their allies, to strengthen their defenses. They needed to learn more about the sorceress, about her weaknesses, about her plans. They needed to be ready for the battle that was to come. "We will start tomorrow," he said. "We will travel to the ancient groves, where the spirits of the forest dwell. They can guide us, help us, prepare us." Lysara nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. She knew that the road ahead would be perilous, that they would face dangers beyond her imagination. But she was not afraid. She was ready. She had Eric by her side, his love, his strength, his unwavering support. She had the power of the Holophong flowing through her veins, the ancient magic of the forest at her command. She had a purpose, a destiny, a reason to fight. As they walked back to the cottage, hand in hand, beneath the ominous gaze of the blood moon, Lysara looked up at Eric, her eyes filled with love, with determination, with a fierce resolve. "We will face this together," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Whatever comes, we will not be defeated." Eric squeezed her hand, his golden eyes reflecting the crimson light of the moon, his love for her a beacon in the gathering darkness. He knew that the battle ahead would be long and arduous, that they might not survive. But he also knew that he would fight to his last breath to protect her, to protect the forest, to protect the world they both loved. They were bound by the Holophong, through rings and through a bond that transcended it. What would become of the fate they had been handed? Chapter 10. The Torn Tapestry of Time. The journey to the ancient groves was arduous, a trek through dense forests, across treacherous ravines, and over mist-shrouded mountains. The blood moon hung heavy in the sky, a constant reminder of the impending danger, of the forces that were gathering against them. The forest itself seemed to be holding its breath, waiting, watching. Eric, in his human form, led the way, his senses sharp, his movements cautious. He was constantly on guard, scanning the surroundings for any sign of threat, his hand never far from the silver dagger he carried at his belt. Lysara followed close behind, drawing strength from his presence, from the silent bond that connected them. She was learning to use her powers, to communicate with the creatures of the forest, to draw upon the energy of the earth. She could feel the subtle vibrations of the trees, the whispers of the wind, the silent warnings of the animals. She was becoming a part of the forest, attuned to its rhythms, its secrets, its power. But she was also learning about the limitations of her power, about the toll it took on her body, on her mind. The use of magic was exhausting, draining, leaving her feeling weak and vulnerable. She realized that she needed to learn to control her power, to conserve her energy, to use it wisely. Eric taught her, guiding her, sharing his knowledge, his experience. He showed her how to draw upon the energy of the earth more efficiently, how to channel it through her body without depleting her own reserves. He taught her ancient rituals, forgotten spells, secret techniques that had been passed down through generations of Holophong guardians. He also told her more about the sorceress, Morwenna, the architect of the curse. She was a powerful being, a master of dark magic, driven by a thirst for revenge, for power. She had been betrayed by Eric's ancestor, a man she had loved, a man who had chosen the forest, the balance, over her. She believes that she is entitled to the power of the Holophong, Eric said, his voice filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. She believes that it was stolen from her, and she will stop at nothing to reclaim it. He explained that Morwenna had been gathering her forces for centuries, building an army of corrupted creatures, of dark spirits, of human followers seduced by her promises of power. She was a formidable opponent, and they needed to be prepared for anything. As they traveled, Lysara began to experience strange visions, fragments of memories that were not her own. She saw glimpses of the past, of Eric's ancestors, of their battles with Morwenna, of the events that had led to the curse. She saw the sorceress, her face twisted with rage, her eyes burning with hatred. The visions were disorienting, disturbing, leaving her feeling shaken and confused. She didn't understand why she was experiencing them, what they meant. "It is the blood moon," Eric explained. "It is amplifying your connection to the past, to the memories of your bloodline. It is showing you what you need to know, to understand, to prepare." He helped her to interpret the visions, to piece together the fragments of the past, to unravel the secrets of the curse. He showed her how to control the visions, to focus her mind, to access specific memories, specific information. Lysara learned that the curse was not simply a matter of a stolen love, but a complex web of interwoven destinies, of choices made, of consequences endured. She saw the mistakes that had been made, the betrayals that had occurred, the sacrifices that had been offered. She saw the pain, the suffering, the enduring consequences of actions taken centuries ago. The tapestry of time seemed to unfold. She also saw the hope, the resilience, the unwavering determination of those who had fought against Morwenna, of those who had sought to maintain the balance. She saw the love that had endured, the bonds that had been forged, the sacrifices that had been made. The visions were a burden, a responsibility, but they were also a source of strength, of understanding. They gave her a deeper insight into the conflict, into the enemy they faced, into her own role in the unfolding drama. As they neared the ancient groves, the visions intensified, becoming clearer, more vivid. Lysara saw the groves as they had been centuries ago, a place of immense power, of ancient magic, of sacred rituals. She saw the spirits of the forest, powerful beings of light and energy, dwelling in harmony with the human world. She also saw the destruction, the corruption, the desecration of the groves by Morwenna's forces. She saw the spirits being driven out, their power diminished, their connection to the forest severed. The sight filled her with a profound sadness, a sense of loss, but also with a renewed determination. She would restore the groves, she would heal the spirits, she would defeat Morwenna and break the curse. It was her destiny, her responsibility, her duty. They reached the ancient groves at nightfall. The blood moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie, crimson glow over the landscape. The trees were tall and ancient, their branches gnarled and twisted, their leaves rustling in the wind, whispering secrets of the past. The air was thick with magic, with the presence of the spirits, but it was a tainted magic, a corrupted energy that made Lysara's skin crawl. She could feel the pain, the sorrow, the anger of the spirits. Their home, their power was stolen, defiled. What was left of these once sacred grounds? Chapter 11. The Howl of 1,000 Years. The ancient groves were a shadow of their former glory. The once vibrant trees stood gaunt and skeletal, their leaves withered, their branches drooping like the arms of mourners. The air, instead of humming with vibrant life, felt heavy, stagnant, tinged with the residue of dark magic. The ground, once soft with moss and wildflowers, was cracked and barren, scarred by the passage of corrupted creatures. Even under the blood moon's crimson light, Lysara could sense the lingering presence of the forest spirits, a faint whisper of what had once been. They were weak, scattered, their power diminished, but not entirely extinguished. She could feel their pain, their sorrow, their desperate longing for healing, for restoration. Eric, his senses heightened by both his wolfen nature and the power of the blood moon, moved cautiously, his hand resting on the hilt of his dagger. He could sense the presence of Morwenna's followers, lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting. "They are here," he said, his voice low and grim. "Be ready." Lysara nodded, her heart pounding, her hand instinctively moving to the silver ring on her finger. She drew upon the power of the holophong, feeling the energy surge through her veins, tingling on her skin. She was prepared, as much as she could be, for whatever lay ahead. They moved deeper into the groves, following a faint, almost imperceptible path that wound through the skeletal trees. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the rustling of the withered leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Suddenly, a howl pierced the night, a sound of pure malice, of ancient rage. It was not the howl of a single wolf, but a chorus, a symphony of darkness that resonated deep within Lysara's bones. It was the howl of Morwenna's army, the howl of 1,000 years of hatred, of vengeance. From the shadows, figures emerged, creatures of nightmare, corrupted wolves, dark spirits, and human followers, their eyes glowing with a malevolent red light. They were armed with crude weapons, with claws and fangs, with the power of dark magic. So, the descendant arrives, a voice hissed, a voice that was both chillingly beautiful and utterly terrifying. From the center of the attacking force, a figure emerged, a woman of ethereal beauty, her long, black hair cascading down her back, her eyes burning with a cold, blue fire. It was Morwenna, the sorceress, the architect of the curse. She was even more powerful than Lysara had imagined, her presence radiating a dark energy that made the air crackle. She wore a gown of black silk, adorned with silver jewelry, her pale skin contrasting sharply with the darkness that surrounded her. "You have come to your doom, child," Morwenna said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You cannot hope to defeat me. The power of the Hollow Fong is mine by right, and you will be the instrument of my victory." Eric stepped forward, shielding Lysara with his body. "You will not touch her, Morwenna," he growled, his voice filled with a primal fury. "I will not let you." Morwenna laughed, a sound that was both mocking and chilling. "You cannot stop me, Eric," she said. "You are bound by the curse, weakened by your pathetic attachment to this girl. You are no match for me." The battle began. Eric transformed into his wolf form, a magnificent creature of shadow and silver, his golden eyes burning with defiance. He attacked with the ferocity of a wild animal, his claws and fangs tearing at Morwenna's followers. Lysara, drawing upon her newfound power, fought alongside him. She manipulated the shadows, weaving them into shields, into snares, into weapons. She communicated with the remaining spirits of the forest, urging them to lend their strength, their power, to the fight. The spirits, though weakened, responded to her call. They emerged from their hiding places, faint wisps of light and energy, and joined the battle. They attacked Morwenna's followers, disrupting their formations, weakening their attacks, bolstering Eric and Lysara's strength. The battle raged, a chaotic clash of light and darkness, of ancient magic and primal fury. The air was filled with the sounds of howling, of growling, of screaming, of the clash of steel against steel, of the crackling of magic. Lysara fought with a courage she never knew she possessed, driven by her love for Eric, by her determination to protect the forest, by her growing understanding of her own power. She discovered she could not only manipulate shadows, but also heal, mending Eric's wounds, strengthening the spirits, restoring some of the life to the withered trees. But Morwenna was powerful, incredibly so. She wielded dark magic with effortless ease, summoning shadowy creatures, casting spells of destruction, deflecting Lysara's attacks. She seemed unstoppable, invincible. As the battle reached its climax, Morwenna focused her attention on Lysara, her blue eyes burning with hatred. "You are the key," she hissed. "The key to breaking the curse, to unleashing my full power. And I will have you." She unleashed a powerful blast of dark energy, aimed directly at Lysara. Eric, seeing the danger, leaped in front of her, shielding her with his body. The blast struck him, sending him flying backwards, his body crashing against a tree. He lay there, motionless, his golden eyes closed. Lysara screamed, her heart shattering into a million pieces. She rushed to his side, cradling his head in her lap, tears streaming down her face. "Eric," she cried. "No. Please don't leave me." She felt his life force fading, his connection to the Hollow Fong weakening. She knew that he was dying, that she was losing him. And in that moment of despair, of utter loss, something within her snapped. A wave of power, unlike anything she had ever experienced, surged through her, emanating from the ring on her finger, from the mark of the Hollow Fong, from the depths of her soul. It was a power born of love, of grief, of rage, of 1,000 years of accumulated energy. She stood, her eyes burning with a golden light, a light that rivaled the blood moon in intensity. She faced Morwenna, her voice echoing with the power of the holophone, with the voice of generations of guardians. "You will not win," she said, her voice resonating with a power that shook the very foundations of the ancient groves. "You will not destroy the forest. You will not have Eric. You will not break me." The howl that followed was not hers. It was older, stronger. Whose was it? Chapter 12. The Bridge Between Two Worlds. The howl that ripped through the ancient groves was not Lysara's, nor was it entirely Eric's, though it resonated with the essence of the holophone. It was a sound older, deeper, a primal cry that echoed from the very heart of the forest, from the spirits that had been awakened by Lysara's surge of power, by her unwavering love for Eric, by her connection to the ancient magic. It was the collective howl of generations of holophone guardians, of the spirits of the forest, of the very earth itself, rising up in defiance against Morwenna's darkness. It was a sound of power, of resilience, of hope. The howl shook Morwenna, disrupting her concentration, weakening her magic. Her shadowy creatures faltered, their forms flickering, their attacks losing their potency. Her human followers cowered, their eyes filled with terror. Lysara, channeling the immense power that flowed through her, felt a connection to something ancient, something vast, something beyond her comprehension. She felt the presence of the spirits of the forest, not just the weakened remnants that remained in the groves, but the spirits of all those who had come before, the spirits of the entire forest, stretching back through time. She was a conduit, a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the spirits, between the human and the supernatural. She was the embodiment of the holophone, the culmination of generations of guardians, the protector of the balance. She raised her hands, and the shadows responded, swirling around her, forming a vortex of darkness that pulsed with power. The trees, even the withered, skeletal ones, seemed to lean towards her, their branches reaching out like supplicating arms. The earth itself trembled beneath her feet. Morwenna, her face contorted with rage and disbelief, tried to regain control, to unleash another blast of dark magic. But her power was waning, her connection to the darkness weakened by Lysara's surge of light, by the collective howl of the ancient spirits. "You cannot control this power," Morwenna hissed, her voice strained, her body trembling. "It will consume you. It will destroy you." Lysara smiled, a fierce, determined smile that sent a shiver down Morwenna's spine. "This power is not yours to control," she said, her voice echoing with the authority of the holophone. "It belongs to the forest. It belongs to the balance. It belongs to me." She unleashed the power, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a force of healing, of restoration. The vortex of shadows expanded, engulfing the clearing, washing over Morwenna's followers, dissolving their corrupted forms, cleansing the earth of their dark magic. The withered trees began to bloom, their branches sprouting new leaves, their trunks regaining their strength. The barren ground became fertile again, covered with moss and wildflowers. The air, once heavy and stagnant, became fresh and clean, filled with the scent of pine and blossoms. The spirits of the forest, revitalized by Lysara's power, grew stronger, brighter, their forms solidifying, their voices joining in a chorus of celebration, of gratitude. Morwenna, weakened and exposed, struggled against the tide of light, her dark magic dissipating like smoke in the wind. She screamed, her voice filled with anguish, with defeat.
"No," she cried. "This cannot be.
I will not be defeated. I will not be denied." Lysara, her eyes burning with a golden light, approached Morwenna, her hand outstretched. She did not seek to destroy her, to kill her. She sought to heal her, to redeem her, to break the cycle of hatred, of vengeance. "It is over, Morwenna," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The curse is broken. The balance is restored. Let go of your anger, of your pain. Embrace the light.
Return to the forest.
Morwenna looked at Lysara, her blue eyes filled with a mixture of hatred, of fear, and something else. Something that hinted at a flicker of regret, of longing, of a lost innocence. For a moment, it seemed as if she might surrender, as if she might accept Lysara's offer of redemption. But the darkness within her was too strong, too deeply ingrained. The centuries of hatred, of vengeance, had consumed her, leaving her a hollow shell of her former self. With a final, desperate cry, she unleashed the last vestiges of her power, not in attack, but in a desperate act of self-destruction. She exploded in a blinding flash of dark energy, her body dissolving into nothingness, leaving behind only the faint scent of sulfur and the lingering echo of her pain. The blood moon, its purpose fulfilled, began to fade, its crimson light receding, replaced by the pale, silvery glow of the returning crescent. The forest, healed and revitalized, breathed a collective sigh of relief. The balance was restored. Lysara, exhausted but triumphant, collapsed to her knees, the immense power that had flowed through her receding, leaving her feeling weak and drained. But she was not alone. The spirits of the forest surrounded her, their forms shimmering with light, their voices whispering words of gratitude, of love, of blessing. They embraced her, healing her wounds, restoring her strength, filling her with their energy. And then, she felt a familiar presence, a warm embrace, a strong hand gently lifting her to her feet. Eric, his wounds healed, his golden eyes filled with love, with pride, with relief, stood before her, his human form restored. "You did it, Lysara," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "You saved us all."
You saved me.
He kissed her, a kiss of gratitude, of relief, of a love that had endured, a love that had triumphed over darkness. Was their journey over? Chapter 13. The Serpent's Kiss and the Wolf's Embrace. The aftermath of the battle left the ancient groves transformed. Life had returned, vibrant and palpable, the air humming with the energy of the restored spirits, the trees standing tall and proud, their leaves a lush green, even under the dimming light of the waning moon. The scent of blossoms replaced the stench of decay, and the silence was filled with the gentle whispers of the wind and the soft songs of the returning creatures. Lysara and Eric stood amidst this renewed beauty, their hands intertwined, their bodies leaning against each other for support. They were both exhausted, drained by the battle, by the immense power that had flowed through them, but they were also filled with a profound sense of peace, of accomplishment, of love. They had faced their greatest challenge, they had defeated their most formidable enemy, they had restored the balance to the forest. But they both knew that their journey was far from over. Morwenna was gone, but the forces of darkness were not entirely vanquished. There were still threats to be faced, challenges to be overcome, secrets to be uncovered. As they walked back towards the cottage, Eric began to explain the complexities of the curse, the intricacies of the magic that had bound the Holophong for centuries. He spoke of a prophecy that foretold not only Lysara's arrival but also the emergence of another threat, a threat even greater than Morwenna. The curse was not solely Morwenna's creation, he said, his voice low and troubled. She was a pawn, a tool, manipulated by a far more ancient and powerful being, a being known as the Serpent. He explained that the serpent was a creature of immense power, a primordial entity that predated even the Holophong, a being of pure darkness, of chaos, of destruction. It was the serpent who had whispered to Morwenna, who had fueled her hatred, who had guided her actions, who had ultimately sought to use her to break the balance and unleash its own power upon the world. Morwenna was merely the key, Eric said. The serpent is the lock. And now that the key is gone, the serpent will seek another way to open the door, to unleash its darkness upon the world. Lysara felt a chill run down her spine. She had thought that defeating Morwenna was the end, but it was only the beginning. The true enemy was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. How can we defeat something so ancient, so powerful? Eric's gaze hardened, his golden eyes burning with a fierce determination. We find its weakness, he said. We learn its secrets. We prepare for the final battle. We fight. He explained that the prophecy also spoke of a way to defeat the serpent, of a weapon, of a ritual, of a sacrifice. But the details were vague, fragmented, shrouded in mystery. They needed to find more information, to uncover the hidden truths, to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. We will return to the library, Eric said. There are ancient texts, forgotten scrolls, that may hold the answers we seek. We will also seek the counsel of the elders, the oldest and wisest of the forest spirits. They may have knowledge that has been lost to us. The next few days were spent poring over the ancient texts in the library, searching for any mention of the serpent, of the prophecy, of the way to defeat it. Lysara, her ability to access the memories within the books enhanced by her recent experiences, delved deep into the past, seeking answers in the whispers of generations of Holophone guardians. She discovered fragments of information, hints of rituals, clues to the serpent's weaknesses. She learned that the serpent was not a physical being, but a force, an entity that existed in a realm beyond the human world, a realm of shadows and chaos. It could only be defeated by a combination of light and darkness, of magic and sacrifice, of love and loss. One evening, while studying a particularly ancient scroll, Lysara stumbled upon a passage that sent a shiver down her spine. It spoke of a ritual, a binding ritual, that could be used to trap the serpent, to contain its power, to prevent it from entering the human world. But the ritual required a sacrifice of immense power, a sacrifice of a soul. The passage was vague, ambiguous, but the implication was clear. To defeat the serpent, someone had to be willing to give up their life, their essence, their very being. Lysara looked up from the scroll, her eyes meeting Eric's. She saw the same understanding, the same horror, the same dread in his gaze. They both knew what the ritual meant, what it implied. They both knew that one of them might have to make the ultimate sacrifice. The silence in the library was deafening, broken only by the crackling of the fire in the hearth and the beating of their hearts. The weight of the prophecy, of the impending battle, of the potential sacrifice, pressed down on them, heavy and suffocating. Eric reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. His golden eyes, filled with love and sorrow, searched hers. "We will find another way," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "There has to be another way. I will not let you sacrifice yourself, Lysara. I will not lose you." Lysara squeezed his hand, tears welling up in her eyes. She knew that he meant it, that he would do anything to protect her, even sacrifice himself. But she also knew that she could not let him do that she would not allow him to bear that burden alone. The embrace of the wolf, however, was met with the kiss of a serpent. What would become of this conflicted fate? Chapter 14. Scars of the past, seeds of the future. The unspoken question hung heavy in the air, a suffocating presence that permeated every corner of the cottage. The possibility of sacrifice, of one of them having to give up their life to defeat the serpent, cast a long shadow over their love, over their future, over their very existence. They avoided talking about it directly, but it was always there, lurking beneath the surface of their conversations, coloring their interactions, adding a layer of tension, of unspoken fear, to their every moment together. Lysara found herself studying Eric, observing the lines of worry etched on his face, the way his golden eyes seemed to hold a deeper sadness, a more profound awareness of the burden he carried. She saw the scars on his body, the physical reminders of the battles he had fought, the sacrifices he had made. She wondered if he was already contemplating sacrificing himself, if he was already planning to protect her, to spare her from that terrible fate. Eric, in turn, watched Lysara, noticing the way her hand instinctively moved to the silver ring on her finger, the way her gaze lingered on the ancient texts, searching for answers, for a way out, for a solution that would not require such a devastating price. He saw the strength in her, the resilience, the unwavering determination, but he also saw the vulnerability, the fear, the unspoken question that haunted her eyes. They continued their research, delving deeper into the ancient texts, seeking counsel from the elders, the oldest and wisest of the forest spirits. The elders, ancient beings of light and energy, resided in a hidden grove, a place of immense power, accessible only to those who were pure of heart and strong of spirit. Lysara and Eric journeyed to the hidden grove, guided by the spirits of the forest, their path illuminated by the soft glow of fireflies and the gentle whispers of the wind. They stood before the elders, their hearts filled with hope and trepidation, seeking guidance, seeking answers. The elders listened to their story, their ancient eyes filled with wisdom, with compassion, with a deep understanding of the forces at play. They confirmed the prophecy, the threat of the serpent, the necessity of the ritual. But they also offered a glimmer of hope. The sacrifice is necessary, the eldest of the elders said, his voice a resonant hum that vibrated through the very air, but it does not have to be a sacrifice of life. It can be a sacrifice of something else. Something equally precious, equally powerful. Lysara and Eric looked at each other, their eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and hope. What else could be sacrificed? What else could be powerful enough to bind the serpent, to contain its darkness? The elders explained that the ritual required a sacrifice of something that represented the very essence of the holophong, something that embodied the balance between light and darkness, between the human and the supernatural. It could be a sacrifice of power, one of the elders said. A voluntary relinquishment of the ancient magic, a severing of the connection to the holophong. Or it could be a sacrifice of memory, another elder said. A complete erasure of the past, a forgetting of all that has been, a severing of the ties to the ancestors, to the history of the holophong. Lysara and Eric were stunned. These were not easy choices. To sacrifice their power would mean giving up their ability to protect the forest, to defend themselves, to fight against the forces of darkness. To sacrifice their memory would mean losing their identity, their history, their love for each other. They returned to the cottage, their minds reeling with the possibilities, with the agonizing choices that lay before them. They spent the next few days in quiet contemplation, weighing the options, grappling with the implications of each sacrifice. Lysara, looking through the scrolls once again, found an older passage. Something that wasn't there before. Something that spoke of past trauma. Something that could be healed. If the curse began with an act of broken trust, couldn't it, too, end with an act of renewed trust? One evening, as they sat by the fire, their hands intertwined, Eric turned to Lysara, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of love and resolve. I have made my decision, he said, his voice firm but gentle. I will sacrifice my power. I will relinquish my connection to the holophong. It is the only way to protect you, to ensure your future, to save the forest. Lysara looked at him, her heart breaking. She knew that he meant it, that he was willing to give up everything for her. But she could not let him do that. She would not allow him to sacrifice his essence, his identity, his very being. No, she said, her voice unwavering. I will not let you do that. We will find another way. We will face this together. We will heal. She told him about the passage she had found, about the possibility of healing the original wound, of restoring the broken trust that had initiated the curse. She believed that the true sacrifice was not of power or memory, but of the pain, the anger, the resentment that had fueled the darkness for centuries. Eric looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and hope. He had never considered that possibility, had never thought that the curse could be broken by healing, by forgiveness, by love. But he also knew that it would not be easy, that it would require confronting the deepest wounds of the past, facing the darkest shadows of their own hearts, embracing the pain, the anger, the resentment that had been festering for centuries. It was a risky path, a dangerous path, but it was a path that offered a glimmer of hope, a chance for a future free from sacrifice, free from loss, free from darkness. Which path would resonate with the spirits, with the magic of the forest? Chapter 15. The ritual of binding souls. The decision to heal the original wound, to address the broken trust that had birthed the curse, was not a decision made lightly. It was a path fraught with uncertainty, with the potential for failure, with the risk of unleashing even greater darkness. But it was a path that resonated with Lysara's heart, with her growing understanding of the true nature of the holophong, of the balance between light and darkness, of the power of love and forgiveness. Eric, though initially hesitant, was ultimately swayed by Lysara's unwavering conviction, by her deep empathy, by her intuitive understanding of the ancient magic. He saw the wisdom in her approach, the potential for a true and lasting resolution, a way to break the cycle of violence, of hatred, of sacrifice that had plagued the holophong for centuries. They returned to the ancient library, seeking guidance from the ancient texts, searching for a ritual, a spell, a ceremony that could facilitate this healing, that could mend the broken trust, that could appease the serpent and restore the balance. They discovered that the original wound was not simply a matter of Morwenna's betrayal, but a deeper, more complex issue rooted in the ancient history of the holophong, in the relationship between the human world and the supernatural world, in the inherent tension between free will and destiny. The curse was a manifestation of that tension, a consequence of choices made, of promises broken, of trust betrayed. It was a wound that had festered for centuries, passed down through generations, poisoning the relationship between humans and spirits, fueling the darkness, empowering the serpent. To heal the wound, they needed to address the root cause, to confront the ancient grievances, to acknowledge the pain and suffering that had been inflicted on both sides, to offer forgiveness, to rebuild trust. They found a ritual, an ancient ceremony known as the ritual of binding souls. It was a complex and dangerous ritual, requiring immense power, unwavering focus, and a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. It was a ritual that had not been performed in centuries, a ritual that had been deemed too risky, too unpredictable. But Lysara and Eric were determined. They believed that it was the only way to truly break the curse, to defeat the serpent, to secure a future free from sacrifice, from loss, from darkness. The ritual required them to journey to the heart of the forest, to a place where the veil between the worlds was at its thinnest, where the power of the earth was at its strongest, where the spirits of the ancestors could be summoned. They prepared for the ritual meticulously, gathering the necessary ingredients, studying the ancient texts, practicing the incantations, honing their powers. They fasted, meditated, purified themselves, preparing their minds, their bodies, their souls for the ordeal that lay ahead. On the night of the new moon, when the darkness was at its deepest, they journeyed to the heart of the forest, guided by the spirits, their path illuminated only by the faint glow of the stars and the flickering light of their own inner power. They reached a clearing, a circle of ancient stones, surrounded by towering trees. The air was thick with magic, with the presence of the ancestors, with the palpable energy of the earth. It was a place of immense power, of ancient secrets, of profound connection. They built a fire in the center of the circle, using wood gathered from the surrounding trees. They arranged the stones in a specific pattern, according to the instructions in the ancient texts. They placed the necessary ingredients, herbs, crystals, symbols of the holophong on the stones, creating a sacred space, a conduit between the worlds. Lysara and Eric stood facing each other, their hands intertwined, their eyes locked. They were both nervous, apprehensive, but also determined, resolute. Their love for each other, their commitment to the forest, their belief in the power of healing, fueling their courage. They began the ritual, chanting the ancient incantations, their voices blending together, resonating with the power of the holophong, with the energy of the earth, with the whispers of the ancestors. The fire blazed higher, casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. The air crackled with energy, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The spirits of the ancestors began to appear, faint wisps of light, swirling around them, their voices joining in the chant, adding their power to the ritual. Lysara and Eric delved deep into their own hearts, confronting their own shadows, their own fears, their own doubts. They acknowledged the pain of the past, the mistakes that had been made, the betrayals that had occurred. They offered forgiveness to themselves, to each other, to the ancestors, to Morwenna, to the serpent itself. They reached out to the serpent, not with hatred, not with fear, but with compassion, with understanding, with a willingness to heal, to restore the balance. They offered it a choice, a chance to return to the darkness from whence it came, to release its hold on the human world, to embrace the peace of oblivion. The serpent responded, a presence of immense power, of ancient rage, of profound darkness. It resisted, it struggled, it lashed out, trying to break free from the binding ritual, trying to corrupt Lysara and Eric, trying to unleash its chaos upon the world. But Lysara and Eric held firm, their love for each other, their commitment to the forest, their unwavering belief in the power of healing, providing them with the strength, the resilience, the courage to withstand the serpent's assault. They continued the ritual, chanting the incantations, drawing upon the power of the Holophong, channeling the energy of the earth, invoking the spirits of the ancestors. Slowly, gradually, the serpent's resistance began to weaken. Its rage subsided, its darkness diminished, its power waned. It began to understand, to accept, to surrender. Finally, with a final, mournful cry, the serpent released its hold on the human world, retreating back into the shadows, returning to the realm of chaos from whence it came. The curse was broken. The balance was restored. The ritual was complete. Lysara and Eric collapsed to their knees, exhausted, drained, but also triumphant, elated, their hearts filled with a profound sense of peace, of accomplishment, of love. They had done it. They had healed the ancient wound. They had defeated the serpent. They had secured a future free from sacrifice, from loss, from darkness. Or so they believed at the moment. But what lurked just beyond their sight? Chapter 16. The Huntress and the Haunted. The immediate aftermath of the ritual brought a wave of tranquility, a sense of profound peace that settled over the forest, over Lysara and Eric, over their very souls. The air seemed cleaner, the colors brighter, the sounds of the forest sharper, more vibrant. The balance had been restored, the curse broken, the serpent banished. But peace, especially in a world where magic and the supernatural intertwined with the mundane, was often fleeting, a fragile illusion shattered by the ever-present threat of darkness, of unforeseen challenges, of the consequences of actions taken, of destinies yet to be fulfilled. Lysara and Eric knew that their journey was not over, that their victory over the serpent was not the end, but a new beginning. They had healed the ancient wound, but the scars remained, reminders of the past, lessons learned, burdens carried. They had secured a future free from the specific threat of the serpent, but the world was still a dangerous place, filled with other threats, other challenges, other enemies. They spent the next few weeks consolidating their victory, strengthening their defenses, reconnecting with the spirits of the forest, restoring the ancient groves to their former glory. They shared their story with the elders, who rejoiced in their success, offering their wisdom, their guidance, their support. But even as they celebrated their triumph, a new threat began to emerge, a threat that was both unexpected and deeply personal. It came in the form of a woman, a huntress, a warrior, a being driven by a singular purpose, to eradicate all creatures of darkness, to cleanse the world of all supernatural influence, to restore what she believed to be the natural order. Her name was Seraphina, and she was a legend among those who hunted in the shadows, a figure of fear and respect, a force of nature. She was tall and slender, with piercing blue eyes, long, silver hair, and a body honed by years of training, of combat, of relentless pursuit. She wore armor of polished steel, carried a sword of gleaming silver, and possessed an arsenal of weapons designed to kill creatures of darkness. She had heard rumors of the Holophong, of the curse, of the prophecy, of Lysara and Eric's victory over the serpent. She did not believe in balance, in coexistence, in the possibility of harmony between the human and the supernatural worlds. She believed in eradication, in purification, in a world cleansed of all that she deemed to be unnatural, to be monstrous. She arrived at the edge of the forest, her presence sending a ripple of fear through the creatures of the night, her intention clear, her purpose unwavering. She was there to hunt, to kill, to destroy. Eric, his senses heightened by his wolfen nature, was the first to detect her presence. He felt her animosity, her hatred, her unwavering determination. He knew that she was a threat, a formidable opponent, a force to be reckoned with. "She is here," he said to Lysara, his voice low and grim. "The huntress. She has come for us." Lysara felt a chill run down her spine. She had hoped for peace, for a respite from the constant threat of danger, but it was not to be. She knew that they had to face this new challenge, that they had to defend themselves, to protect the forest, to preserve the balance they had fought so hard to restore. "We will not hide," she said, her voice firm, her eyes filled with determination. "We will meet her. We will try to reason with her. We will show her that we are not her enemy." Eric nodded, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and respect. He knew that Seraphina was a formidable opponent, that reasoning with her might be impossible, that they might have to fight. But he also knew that Lysara was right, that they could not hide, that they had to face this challenge head-on. They prepared for the confrontation, gathering their allies, strengthening their defenses, honing their powers. They knew that it might be a battle to the death, a fight for survival, a test of their strength, their courage, their love. They met Seraphina at the edge of the forest, beneath the pale light of the full moon. She stood there, tall and imposing, her armor gleaming, her sword drawn, her blue eyes burning with a cold, fierce light. "I have come for the Holophong," she said, her voice clear and resonant, echoing through the silent forest. "I have come to end the curse, to cleanse this land of your unnatural influence. I have come to kill you." Lysara stepped forward, her hand outstretched, her voice calm and measured. "We are not your enemy, Seraphina," she said. "We have broken the curse. We have restored the balance. We seek only peace." Seraphina laughed, a sound that was both mocking and chilling. "Peace?" she said. "There can be no peace with creatures of darkness. There can be no balance with the unnatural. Your existence is an abomination, and I will erase it." She lunged, her sword flashing in the moonlight, her movements swift and deadly. Eric, transforming into his wolf form, intercepted her attack, his claws and fangs meeting her steel, the clash of metal echoing through the forest. The battle had begun. A huntress and the one she sought to destroy. Which would prevail? Chapter 17. A shattered mirror, a broken vow. The fight was brutal, a whirlwind of steel and claw, of magic and muscle, of unwavering conviction against primal instinct. Seraphina was a skilled warrior, her movements precise and deadly, her attacks relentless. Eric, in his wolf form, was a formidable opponent, his strength and agility enhanced by his supernatural nature, his senses sharp, his instincts honed by centuries of survival. Lysara, drawing upon her own power, supported Eric, weaving shadows into shields, deflecting Seraphina's attacks, attempting to disarm her, to incapacitate her without causing her serious harm. She still held on to the hope that they could reason with Seraphina, that they could show her that they were not her enemy, that they were not a threat to the world. But Seraphina was relentless, driven by her unwavering belief in her mission, by her hatred of all things supernatural, by her conviction that she was doing the right thing, that she was cleansing the world of evil. "You cannot win," she hissed, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her blue eyes burning with a cold fire. "I will not stop until you are dead, until this forest is cleansed, until the world is purified." Eric, his body bleeding from numerous wounds, his strength waning, fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, protecting Lysara, defending the forest, upholding the balance. He knew that he could not defeat Seraphina in his weakened state, that he was losing the battle, that he was doomed. Lysara, seeing Eric falter, felt a surge of desperation, of fear, of rage. She could not let Seraphina win. She could not let her kill Eric. She could not let her destroy the balance they had fought so hard to restore. She unleashed her full power, drawing upon the energy of the earth, channeling the spirits of the forest, weaving the shadows into a vortex of darkness that engulfed Seraphina, blinding her, disorienting her, disrupting her attacks. But Seraphina, driven by her unwavering conviction, fought through the darkness, her sword still flashing, her attacks still relentless. She managed to break free from the vortex, her armor scorched, her body bruised, but her determination undiminished. She lunged at Lysara, her sword aimed at her heart, her eyes filled with a cold, triumphant light. Eric, seeing the danger, threw himself in front of Lysara, shielding her with his body, taking the blow that was meant for her. The sword pierced his chest, sinking deep into his flesh, piercing his heart. He let out a howl of pain, a sound that echoed through the forest, a sound that shattered Lysara's heart. He collapsed to his knees, his body trembling, his golden eyes fading, his life force ebbing away. Seraphina, her face contorted with a mixture of triumph and horror, stood over him, her sword dripping with his blood. Lysara screamed, her voice filled with anguish, with despair, with a rage that consumed her. She rushed to Eric's side, cradling his head in her lap, tears streaming down her face.
Eric, she cried. No.
Please don't leave me. Please, I love you. Eric looked at her, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of pain, of love, of regret. He reached out and touched her cheek, his fingers leaving a smudge of blood on her skin. Lysara, he whispered, his voice weak, his breath fading. My Lysara, I love you. His hand fell limp, his eyes closed, his body went still. He was gone. Lysara's world shattered. Her love, her protector, her companion, her soulmate, was dead. Killed by the huntress, by Seraphina, by the woman who believed she was doing the right thing, who believed she was cleansing the world of evil. But as Lysara cradled Eric's lifeless body, as her tears mingled with his blood, as her grief threatened to consume her, she saw something that changed everything. She saw a reflection in Seraphina's polished steel armor, a reflection that was not her own, a reflection that was familiar. It was the reflection of Morwenna, the sorceress, the architect of the curse, the woman they had thought they had defeated. But it was not Morwenna as she had been, a creature of darkness, of hatred, of vengeance. It was Morwenna as she had been before the curse, a woman of beauty, of light, of love. And then Lysara understood. The curse was not broken. It had merely shifted, transformed, taken on a new form. Seraphina was not just a huntress. She was a vessel, a conduit for Morwenna's spirit, for her hatred, for her vengeance. The serpent was gone, but the darkness remained, embodied in Seraphina, fueled by her unwavering belief in her righteous mission. Seraphina, struck by an errant blow from Lysara's magic, had broken a mirror she carried. A mirror given to her by a mysterious benefactor that had a protection spell. Now it had shattered along with the vow she had taken. What was left of this haunted, driven woman? Chapter 18. The gathering storm of revelation. The shattering of the mirror, a seemingly insignificant detail in the midst of the devastating loss, was the key, the turning point, the moment of revelation. It was not just a mirror, but a magical artifact, a conduit, a prison that had contained Morwenna's spirit, channeling her hatred, her vengeance, her unwavering belief in her righteous mission through Seraphina. With the mirror broken, the spell was shattered, the connection severed, the illusion dispelled. Seraphina, no longer under Morwenna's influence, no longer driven by her hatred, her vengeance, her unwavering conviction, stumbled back, her blue eyes wide with confusion, with horror, with recognition. She looked at Eric's lifeless body, at Lysara's grief-stricken face, at the blood on her own hands, on her sword, and she finally understood the truth. She had been manipulated, used, deceived. She had been a weapon, a tool, an instrument of darkness, not a force for good, not a cleanser of evil, but a perpetuator of it. What have I done? She whispered, her voice trembling, her body shaking, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't know. I thought I was doing the right thing. Lysara, her grief still raw, her heart still shattered, looked at Seraphina, not with hatred, not with anger, but with a profound sadness, a deep empathy, a glimmer of understanding. She saw the pain, the confusion, the horror in Seraphina's eyes, and she knew that she was not her enemy, that she was a victim, just as Eric had been, just as she herself had been. It wasn't you, Seraphina, she said, her voice hoarse, her tears still flowing. It was Morwenna. She used you. She manipulated you. She twisted your beliefs, your intentions, your very soul. She explained everything, the history of the Holophong, the curse, the prophecy, the serpent, Morwenna's survival, her manipulation of Seraphina, the broken mirror, the shattered spell. Seraphina listened, her body trembling, her mind reeling, her world crumbling around her. She had dedicated her life to fighting darkness, to eradicating creatures of the supernatural, to cleansing the world of evil. And now, she realized that she had been serving the very darkness she had sought to destroy, that she had been an instrument of evil, that she had killed an innocent man, a man who had sought only to protect the balance, to defend the forest, to love and be loved. The guilt, the shame, the horror were overwhelming. She collapsed to her knees, her body racked with sobs, her hands covering her face, her mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of her actions, the devastating consequences of her misplaced beliefs. Lysara, despite her own grief, despite her own loss, felt a surge of compassion for Seraphina. She knew what it was like to be manipulated, to be deceived, to be used as a tool of darkness. She knew the pain, the confusion, the horror of realizing that you had been on the wrong side, that you had caused harm, that you had betrayed your own values, your own beliefs. She knelt beside Seraphina, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder, offering comfort, offering understanding, offering forgiveness. It's not your fault, Seraphina, she said, her voice soft but firm. You were a victim, just as we were. Morwenna was the enemy, not you.
And she is gone now.
The curse is truly broken. The balance is restored. Seraphina looked up at Lysara, her blue eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude, of shame, of hope. She saw the kindness in Lysara's eyes, the compassion in her touch, the forgiveness in her voice, and she felt a glimmer of redemption, a possibility of healing, a chance to atone for her actions. But even as they shared this moment of understanding, of forgiveness, of shared grief, a new threat began to emerge, a storm gathering on the horizon, a consequence of the broken mirror, of the shattered spell, of Morwenna's final, desperate act. With Morwenna's spirit released from the mirror, from Seraphina, it was no longer contained, no longer bound. It was free to roam, to seek a new host, a new vessel, a new way to manifest its darkness, to continue its quest for vengeance, for power. And it found its target in the most vulnerable, the most susceptible, the most heartbroken. It found its target in Lysara. As Lysara comforted Seraphina, as she offered her forgiveness, as she tried to make sense of the devastating loss she had suffered, she felt a presence, a darkness, a cold, insidious whisper that invaded her mind, her heart, her very soul. It was Morwenna, her spirit weakened but not extinguished, seeking refuge, seeking power, seeking revenge. She whispered to Lysara, preying on her grief, on her loss, on her vulnerability, offering her power, offering her vengeance, offering her Eric. He is not gone, child, Morwenna whispered, her voice seductive, insidious, promising. I can bring him back. I can restore him to you. I can give you the power to avenge his death, to destroy those who have wronged you, to rule this forest, to rule the world. Lysara, her mind clouded by grief, her heart shattered by loss, her spirit weakened by the constant battles, by the endless threats, felt a flicker of temptation. She longed for Eric. She yearned for his touch, his voice, his love. She craved vengeance. She desired power. She wanted to lash out, to destroy, to make someone pay for her pain, for her loss. Morwenna's whispers grew stronger, more insistent, more seductive. She offered Lysara a vision, a glimpse of Eric, whole and healthy, smiling at her, reaching out to her, promising her forever. Lysara hesitated, her resolve wavering, her heart torn between grief and love, between darkness and light, between vengeance and forgiveness. The storm had gathered. The choice was at hand. Where would her heart take her next? Chapter 19. The Crucible of Love and Loss. The temptation was almost overwhelming. Morwenna's whispers, slithering into the raw wound of Lysara's grief, offered a balm that was both seductive and dangerous. The vision of Eric, whole and healthy, smiling at her, reaching out to her, promising her forever, was a siren song, luring her towards the rocks of despair and destruction. But even in her grief-stricken state, even with her heart shattered and her spirit weakened, Lysara was not entirely lost. She still possessed a core of strength, a spark of light, a memory of Eric's love, of his unwavering commitment to the balance, of his belief in forgiveness, in redemption, in the power of good over evil. She remembered his words, his touch, his golden eyes filled with love, with pride, with hope. She remembered his sacrifice, his willingness to give up everything to protect her, to protect the forest, to preserve the balance. And she remembered her own promise, her own commitment to the Holophong, to the ancient magic, to the responsibility of protecting the balance, of upholding the light, of resisting the darkness. She realized that Morwenna's offer was a lie, a cruel deception, a trap designed to ensnare her, to corrupt her, to use her as a vessel for her own darkness, for her own vengeance. She knew that bringing Eric back through Morwenna's power would be a perversion of his memory, a betrayal of his sacrifice, a corruption of his love. With a surge of will, with a renewed sense of purpose, with a fierce determination fueled by her love for Eric, by her commitment to the balance, by her unwavering belief in the power of good, Lysara resisted the temptation, rejected Morwenna's whispers, refused her offer. "No," she said, her voice trembling but firm, her eyes clearing, her spirit strengthening. "I will not be your pawn, Morwenna. I will not betray Eric's memory. I will not succumb to the darkness. I will honor his sacrifice." Morwenna's whispers turned to screams of rage, of frustration, of defeat. Her vision of Eric shattered, replaced by images of darkness, of destruction, of despair. She lashed out at Lysara, trying to break her will, to corrupt her spirit, to force her to submit. But Lysara, fortified by her love for Eric, by her commitment to the balance, by the support of Seraphina, who had recovered from her own shock and horror, and now stood by Lysara's side, ready to fight, resisted Morwenna's assault. She drew upon the power of the Holophong, not the dark, corrupted power that Morwenna offered, but the pure, ancient magic that flowed through her veins, the magic of the forest, the magic of love, the magic of light. She reached out to Seraphina, offering her hand, offering her support, offering her partnership. "We must fight her together, Seraphina," she said, her voice clear and strong. "We must banish her, once and for all. We must avenge Eric." Seraphina, her blue eyes filled with a mixture of remorse, of determination, of gratitude, took Lysara's hand, their fingers intertwining, their spirits uniting, their powers blending. Together, they faced Morwenna's spirit, their combined strength, their shared purpose, their unwavering belief in the power of good, forming a formidable shield against the darkness. They chanted the ancient incantations, drawing upon the energy of the earth, invoking the spirits of the forest, channeling the power of the Holophong, weaving a tapestry of light that pushed back the shadows, that weakened Morwenna's spirit, that drove her away from Lysara, away from the forest, away from the world. Morwenna screamed, her voice filled with anguish, with defeat, with a final, desperate cry of rage. Her spirit, weakened and depleted, was forced to retreat, to flee, to seek refuge in the shadows, to bide her time, to wait for another opportunity to strike. But for now, she was defeated. For now, the balance was restored. For now, Lysara and Seraphina had triumphed. They collapsed to their knees, exhausted, drained, but also relieved, grateful, their hearts filled with a mixture of sorrow and hope. They had faced their greatest challenge. They had overcome their deepest fears. They had resisted the ultimate temptation. They had avenged Eric, not through violence, not through vengeance, but through love, through forgiveness, through an unwavering commitment to the balance, to the light, to the power of good over evil. But the battle was not over. Morwenna's spirit still lingered, a threat that would have to be faced eventually. And Eric was still gone, his loss a gaping wound in Lysara's heart, a pain that would never fully heal. The crucible of love and loss had forged a new bond, a new partnership, a new understanding between Lysara and Seraphina. They were no longer enemies, but allies, sisters in arms, bound together by shared grief, by shared purpose, by a shared commitment to protecting the balance, to defending the forest, to honoring Eric's memory. The final confrontation would require a sacrifice. But of what? Or of whom? Chapter 20. The final confrontation of hearts. The knowledge that Morwenna's spirit still lingered, a shadowy threat lurking on the periphery, cast a pall over the fragile peace that Lysara and Seraphina had achieved. They knew that their victory was temporary, that the final confrontation was inevitable, that they would have to face Morwenna again, sooner or later. They dedicated themselves to preparing for that inevitable confrontation, honing their powers, strengthening their defenses, seeking guidance from the elders, from the spirits of the forest, from the ancient texts. They learned more about Morwenna's history, her motivations, her weaknesses, searching for a way to defeat her permanently, to banish her spirit from the world forever. They discovered that Morwenna's power was rooted in her connection to the serpent, to the ancient darkness that it represented. Even though the serpent itself had been banished, its essence still lingered, a residue of chaos, of destruction, that fueled Morwenna's spirit, that gave her strength, that allowed her to persist. To defeat Morwenna permanently, they needed to sever that connection, to cleanse the world of the serpent's lingering influence, to eliminate the source of her power. They found a ritual, an ancient ceremony, even more complex and dangerous than the ritual of binding souls, a ritual that required a sacrifice of the heart. It was not a literal sacrifice of a physical heart, but a symbolic sacrifice of something that represented the very essence of love, of connection, of life. It could be a sacrifice of a cherished memory, of a deep bond, of a profound relationship, of a powerful emotion. Lysara and Seraphina wrestled with the implications of the ritual, with the agonizing choice that lay before them. What were they willing to sacrifice? What was the price of permanent peace? What was the cost of defeating Morwenna forever? Seraphina, burdened by guilt over Eric's death, over her role in Morwenna's manipulations, was willing to sacrifice anything, to give up everything to atone for her actions, to secure a future free from darkness. She offered to sacrifice her memories, her identity, her very being. But Lysara, remembering Eric's love, his sacrifice, his unwavering belief in forgiveness, in redemption, in the power of good, refused to let Seraphina make that sacrifice. She knew that it was not the answer, that it would not truly defeat Morwenna, that it would only perpetuate the cycle of loss, of sacrifice, of pain. She realized that the true sacrifice, the sacrifice that would truly sever Morwenna's connection to the serpent, to the darkness, was not a sacrifice of something external, something tangible, but a sacrifice of something internal, something intangible. It was a sacrifice of the hatred, the anger, the resentment, the grief that fueled Morwenna's spirit, that gave her power, that allowed her to persist. It was a sacrifice of the darkness within themselves, a willingness to forgive, to let go, to embrace the light, to choose love over hate, to choose hope over despair. Lasara understood at last what was required. To release the power of the holophong completely.
To trust.
To believe. To accept her fate, she had to become it. She had to embody the balance, not with power, but by releasing it. On the night of the full moon, when the veil between the worlds was at its thinnest, they journeyed to the heart of the forest, to the same clearing where they had performed the ritual of binding souls. They built a fire, arranged the stones, placed the necessary ingredients, creating a sacred space, a conduit between the worlds. They stood facing each other, their hands intertwined, their eyes locked. They were both afraid, uncertain, but also determined, resolute. Their love for Eric, their commitment to the forest, their belief in the power of forgiveness, fueling their courage. They began the ritual, chanting the ancient incantations, drawing upon the energy of the earth, invoking the spirits of the forest, channeling the power of the holophong, not to wield it as a weapon, but to release it, to surrender it, to offer it as a sacrifice. As they chanted, Morwenna's spirit appeared, drawn to the power of the ritual, sensing an opportunity to strike, to reclaim her dominance, to unleash her vengeance upon the world. She was weak, fragmented, her form flickering, her voice a raspy whisper, but she was still dangerous, still filled with hatred, with anger, with a burning desire for revenge. "You cannot defeat me," she hissed, her voice echoing through the clearing. "I am eternal. I am the darkness. I am inevitable." Lasara and Seraphina ignored her taunts, continuing the ritual, focusing their minds, their hearts, their souls on the sacrifice, on the release of the power, on the forgiveness, on the love. Lasara, channeling the essence of the holophong, released her grip on the ancient magic, surrendering her power, offering it to the earth, to the spirits, to the universe. She felt the power drain from her, leaving her feeling weak, vulnerable, but also free. As she released the power, she also released the grief, the anger, the resentment, the hatred that had been festering within her, that had been fueling Morwenna's spirit. She forgave Morwenna. She forgave Seraphina. She forgave herself. Seraphina, following Lasara's lead, released her own guilt, her own shame, her own self-hatred, offering it as a sacrifice, cleansing her heart, purifying her soul. As they released their darkness, as they embraced the light, as they chose love over hate, as they offered forgiveness over vengeance, Morwenna's spirit began to weaken, to fade, to dissipate. Her connection to the serpent, to the ancient darkness, was severed. Her source of power was gone. Her hold on the world was broken. She screamed, her voice filled with anguish, with despair, with a final, desperate cry of defeat. Her spirit, fragmented and depleted, dissolved into nothingness, returning to the void from whence it came, banished forever from the world. The ritual was complete. The sacrifice had been made. The balance was truly restored. The darkness was vanquished. Lasara and Seraphina collapsed to their knees, exhausted, drained, but also at peace, free, their hearts filled with a profound sense of relief. They had done it. They had defeated Morwenna. They had saved the forest. They had secured a future free from darkness. But the victory came at a price. Lasara was no longer connected to the holophong. Its power was gone. And yet, a deeper power bloomed. Epilogue. The forest thrived. Freed from the lingering shadow of Morwenna and the serpent, it blossomed with renewed vigor, a testament to the power of healing, of forgiveness, of the balance restored. The ancient groves resonated with the joyful songs of the spirits. The trees stood tall and proud, their leaves of vibrant green, the air filled with the scent of blossoms and the gentle murmur of the wind. Lasara, though no longer connected to the holophong in the traditional sense, found a new kind of strength, a deeper connection to the earth, to the spirits, to the natural world. She had relinquished the ancient magic, but in doing so, she had discovered a power that was even more profound, a power that came from within, a power that was rooted in love, in compassion, in wisdom. She became a healer, a guide, a teacher, sharing her knowledge, her experience, her understanding with others, helping them to connect with the natural world, to find their own inner strength, to embrace the balance within themselves. She walked the forest paths, not as a guardian wielding supernatural power, but as a wise woman, a caretaker, a friend to all living things. Seraphina, transformed by her experiences, by her remorse, by her newfound understanding of the true meaning of balance, became Lysara's steadfast companion, her loyal friend, her sister in arms. She laid down her sword, her armor, her huntress ways, dedicating her life to protecting the forest, not through violence, but through understanding, through compassion, through love. She learned to communicate with the creatures of the forest, to understand their needs, their fears, their wisdom. She became a bridge between the human and the supernatural worlds, fostering understanding, promoting harmony, ensuring that the balance was maintained, not through force, but through cooperation. Together, Lysara and Seraphina created a sanctuary, a haven, a place where humans and spirits could coexist peacefully, where the ancient wisdom of the forest could be shared, where the wounds of the past could be healed, where the seeds of the future could be sown. They never forgot Eric. His memory lived on in their hearts, in their actions, in their commitment to the balance, in their unwavering belief in the power of love, of forgiveness, of redemption. They built a small shrine in his honor, in the clearing where he had fallen, a place where they could remember him, honor him, celebrate his life, his sacrifice, his love. The years passed, seasons changed, life unfolded. Lysara and Seraphina grew old together, their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing, their wisdom deepening. They had faced darkness, they had overcome loss, they had found forgiveness, they had restored balance. And in the end, as they sat together, hand in hand, beneath the shade of the ancient oak, watching the sunset paint the sky with vibrant colors, they knew that they had lived a life worthy of the Holophong, a life worthy of Eric's love, a life worthy of the forest. They had found peace, not in the absence of darkness, but in the embrace of light, not in the wielding of power, but in the surrender to love, not in the pursuit of vengeance, but in the practice of forgiveness. As the stars began to appear, twinkling in the darkening sky, Lysara and Seraphina closed their eyes, their spirits merging with the forest, their love enduring, their legacy secure, their journey complete. The end.